is Doug DeRusha. I'm a National Sales Manager with CR Laurence. With me is Danny Donahue, who's the Director of our Shower Door Department from California. And today's learning action demo is going to be the installation of our shower door. And we're going to be talking about installation techniques, how the door is properly done. I would presume that most of you are familiar and are experienced installers. But what we're going to talk about today are many of the helpful hints and tricks that kind of make your job a little bit easier. Danny has probably 30 years experience in installing shower doors. And can you hear? Okay, is this any better? Okay, great, thanks. Danny has over 30 years of installation experience in shower doors, and we've been involved with CR Laurence. I presume that everyone's familiar with CR Laurence, but for a few of you that might not, we're a manufacturer of architectural hardware, and that includes shower doors, commercial doors, railing systems, transaction hardware, and the like. But today's demonstration is exclusively shower doors and installation techniques. We're going to be talking about a few different things. We have a program called Showers Online, which makes things a lot easier to lay out and do your shower installations. And I don't know, is anyone familiar with Showers Online? Anyone here, I presume, have that program? And it's just an evolving program. It's been out for so many years, and I think we've installed or done probably 1 million shower enclosures in that program alone. So it's an exciting program. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So we're going to get right into the installation, and I'll pass this over to Danny, who's going to talk about what we're going to do during the installation. This is a very informal presentation, so raise your hand. I almost wish we didn't have to use the microphone because we're going to be walking around and talking, but raise your hand, ask questions. Feel free to get closer if you want. Just give us a little space to walk around. But any questions that come up, just raise your hand and we'll be happy to answer them.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Doug sure sounds like a salesman, doesn't he? He's damn good at what he does, I'll tell you what. But what we're going to talk about is, it's a pretty basic opening. It's just a door with an inline panel and a 90-degree return. I don't think we're breaking any real new ground here as far as like in terms of difficulty or anything like that. But what we want to do is we want to just give you sort of the how-to of how we recommend doing things. And we all know there's more than one way to do things, and in many cases more than one way to do things right. But we want to tell you the way that CRL would recommend doing something like this. So without further ado, when it comes to coming out and putting one of these things in, the first thing you have to do is measure the opening. So we usually recommend taking centerline dimensions that would go from the wall out to the 90-degree junction point and then back over. Now, based on all those centerline dimensions, of course, you're going to generate your glass sizes. One thing we also recommend is that you use a level on every surface, on the verticals, on the horizontals, also on the bottom threshold. Make sure the thing's pitched inward. Bottom threshold's not pitched inward. Let's say it's flat, or even worse, it's pitched outward. Guess what? That's a red flag, and we're always about telling either the contractor or the customer, whatever the case may be, exactly what you run into before you do your installation as opposed to after you do your installation. We're going to talk about a lot about preparing, making sure that things go right before you get to the job. Putting the actual glass in the hole should be one of the easiest parts of this job. It's all the work that goes into preparing for that kind of thing. So checking everything with an out of plumb and out of level condition is real important. Now, what you've got to do at that point, once you've measured the opening, determined all your out of plumb and out of level, now you've got to generate your glass sizes. Well, generating glass sizes can either be done the old-fashioned way by hand, which, tried and true, but maybe a little more time-consuming, or you can use Showers Online. What do you know? CR Laurence has a program for generating glass sizes for frameless shower doors. We've had it for almost 20 years now, and as Doug was saying, we've generated millions of structures, tens of millions of pieces of glass. It's very reliable, and anyone who has it knows. Those of you who don't have it, try a 30-day free trial. You got nothing to lose. So once you've generated your glass sizes, and you want to make sure that you also stay within the manufacturer's specifications. All hinges and hardware for doors have specifications associated to them. How wide a door can you do? How heavy a door can you do? Always stay within the manufacturer's specifications, because if you don't, and you have some sort of trouble down the line, the manufacturer will not stand behind it, because they have specs for a reason. The most common thing I hear from people are, well, I'm sure I can just go over a little bit, right? I mean, you guys have like a safety rating built into it, right? So I'm sure I can go over by just a few pounds or just a few inches.
No.
No, you don't go over. Nobody goes over. It's just not the way that it works. So stay within the specs. That's always the right way to go. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you is check the glass when you get it. You can order the glass and you can say, okay, my glass, these are my drawings, this is how the glass should be. Check the glass when you receive it, because guess what? The company who made your glass may not have made it exactly correct. Maybe it came in a little heavy, a little light, just completely wrong, holes drilled in the wrong place. The last thing you want to do is load everything up, get on the job site, unload your tools, bring it all upstairs to Mrs. Smith's bathroom, and find out that the glass was the wrong size, and you could have figured that out at the shop. Same thing goes with your hardware. Now, I know C.R. Laurence is a flawless company that would never mispack anything ever. But on the odd chance that another manufacturer mispacks something, you're going to want to open up your hardware, take a quick look at it. Now, the last thing I ever want to hear from someone is, I drove 200 miles to this job site and I opened it up and it was a chrome hinge instead of a brushed nickel hinge or something like that. Check all your stuff at the shop. It should be common sense, but it's one of those things that I still continue to hear after 21 plus years of being with CRL. I still hear people tell me that they have an issue with not checking something before they left the shop. And of course, who do they want to blame it on? They want to blame it right back on us. So you can also, when you have U-channels, we're doing clamps here on this installation, but if you have U-channels or something like that, good idea is to measure and cut those things in the shop. You've got a controlled environment, you've got the chop saw set up there, you've got everything ready to go. Cut it, drill it, get it all ready to go, package it up, that way when you bring it out, you're not out there doing fabrication work in Mrs. Smith's bathroom or out at your truck. Do it in a controlled environment. Do it somewhere where you can really get at it. And this is a good one here. When it comes to doors like this that have clamps on them, now, you're about ready to lay out your clamps to drill into, whatever tile or stone substrate that you've got. You can't go by the dimensions you wrote down on your glass size that you ordered. You've got to physically measure your glass to see where those holes are, where they land on the glass. Make those dimensions and then thoughtfully figure out how to lay out your clamps based on the dimensions of the actual glass, not what it should have been or not what it was supposed to be. Can't stress that enough. And figure your clearances. Like if I measure from the bottom of this piece of glass over to the hole and I find that it's exactly 4 inches, and I know that I want to leave a 3/16 gap between the glass and the wall, then I'm going to mount my clamp at 4 3/16 of an inch. I'm not going to mount it at 4 inches. That wouldn't be right. You have to consider the clearances that you've got. The same thing goes with measuring up. Make sure that you've accounted for the clearance on the bottom of the glass. Again, a lot of these things are pretty elementary, and we haven't even touched a piece of glass yet. So, and when you get out to the job site, a lot of times people will lay out like a blue painter's tape, lay it down on the curb if it doesn't leave any adhesive. Mark your center lines, mark for your holes. Also plumb it up the vertical wall, to make sure that you can mark your holes there as well. And just so you're not marking on someone's tile or stone. Any questions so far? Having some fun, aren't we? All right. Okay. Hang on to this, Doug, and I'm going to start putting a piece of glass in.
All right, the hinge that we're going to be using today is called our Melbourne series hinge. C.R. Laurence carries, when we first started doing shower doors back in the early 90s, we carried 4 different types of hinges. We've now expanded upon that, and C.R. Laurence now carries over 22 different styles of hinges in 26 options of colors. Not all the hardware is available in all the colors, but that's a wide color range that we're doing. Of the 22 different styles of hinges, the Melbourne is one of our more underutilized hinges. We like this a lot. If anyone's familiar with a Geneva hinge or a hinge such as a 2.5 inch 3/8 glass, the Melbourne's nice because it handles a little more weight. It's still a small hinge, but it also has a square cutout that's involved in it. And then some people like to have a gasket that's pre-applied onto the hinge plate. This is a unique hinge that actually has a gasket that comes off, and you can put it embedded into the hinge before you start your installation. There's 2 pins on it that the gasket embeds itself into the hinge plate, so that's a unique design for this hinge. It's called our Melbourne. We also have some cover plates that cover over the screws to give you a nice sleek line. So keep that in mind as well.
One other thing I want to get into before we mount this piece of glass is, if you're going to drill down into somebody's base the way that we recommend doing so, always squirt a little bit of silicone into the hole that you've drilled, then put your anchor in. By the time you run your screw in with the anchor and the silicone and everything else, you don't really have to worry about water getting into there and having some sort of penetrating the water membrane, water intrusion issue. Always recommend squirting silicone into those. Not as necessary on something way up here, you got to use common sense, got to use logic, right? Where's the water going? It's all going from about 2 feet and down, really, for the most part. Water's not going to leak into the wall up here. There's just can't generate enough water to get in there. So always use a little bit of silicone into the holes there. Doug, I'm going to put this piece of glass in.
Good again. The silicone that we recommend to use, everyone has their own style of silicone. There's 2 types of silicones in the market: a standard acid cure silicone and a neutral pure silicone. Does anyone ever smell that vinegary type smell when you're in an enclosed bathroom? That's an acid cure silicone. And sometimes it just puts off a smell that's real bad, but more important is that it has an acid as it starts to cure, which could affect raw surfaces such as concrete or granite or marble. So be careful of using an acid-toxic silicone. That's when you want to use a neutral pure silicone. Also, if it's exposed to brass or another type of finish, the acid could affect that finish. So again, we recommend for CR Laurence products an RTV 408 clear silicone.
Okay, we have to use our voices at this point, so I'm going to put this top one in first. Because I don't want the top falling out on me. I'm not worried about the bottom jumping off too much, although I will put my foot on here just to make sure that the thing doesn't want to just hop off on its own. Good? Okay. Now that we've got this in place, we take one of these outside covers here. We got this in place. We're going to take an outside cover, go ahead and put it into this one here. We're going to put it in just a little bit snug. We're not going to overly tighten it because we may need to shift the panel left or right, up or down, that kind of thing. Most of your substrates don't move when you push them. This one did. So, so we're just putting the last of the screws in this thing here. So we've got this fixed panel set up now. We've got it. Always make sure that you. This is a good time. Got a question?
On the slots, you slot.
Yeah, I actually prefer slot cuts. Let me just comment a moment here about this. This is a display that was made by our manufacturing facility. They're not shower door people. I would put slots in the glass. I prefer to use slots. It gets you closer to the mounting surface. Gives you increased adjustability. Just a big fan of using slots. They did holes on this just to test us, just to make sure we know exactly what we're doing out here. And we've got a couple of guys that are riding desks at this point. Keep in mind, when Doug says I've been doing it 30 years, yeah, the first 11 years I installed every day of my life. The last 20 years, side jobs. That's all I can say. So at any rate, we've got this fixed piece of glass set up. Now, this is a good time when you're in the field to make sure that it's plumb this way. Put a level on it to make sure it's not leaning out at the top or, kicked out at the bottom. And also, on a 90-degree, I always like to take this moment to measure from this fixed piece of glass to the wall and at the bottom to there to make sure that I'm going to get the opening that I know I need to put my door into. The next thing I'm going to do is put this little panel in. then I take that dimension one more time. Because your door is a certain size, and you have certain allowances for how much gap you have on either side of the door. And if you don't leave the opening size you want to for your door, you're not going to get even reveals. It's as simple as that. So, without further ado, let's put this other panel in. You see, I do handle a piece of glass like I know what I'm doing. You see that? At least I used to know what I'm doing. Some things never change. Okay. So now we've got this piece of glass installed. We can't just let it go, or otherwise the thing's going to come falling out of the opening. This is one of those cases where if you don't have a 90-degree clamp that's going to go here, or a sleeve over clamp that's going to go there, a quick that duck.
A lot of faith in that tape.
Putting a lot of faith in that tape. Usually I'll use duct tape or something like that, just to temporarily hold the thing in place. I'm not going to keep it there. It just balances it. If you really think about it, if a piece of glass is perfectly balanced, it has no resistance to fall one side or another, so even something like this, light duty, will hold it in place. If it's leaning, well then forget it. It's going to fall out of the way for you. We're going to use this 90-degree glass-to-glass clamp here for this, for the sake of this installation. It's a good idea to use these clamps glass-to-glass like this when you've got wider panels, like this panel going like about 10, 12 inches wide. You could use a sleeve over clamp, and certainly always we recommend a silicone joint. We always recommend that you leave a 16 of an inch gap between the two pieces of glass and tape it, which I'll do a little bit of taping later on, and actually run a bead of silicone that goes all the way through the full thickness of the glass. I'm not a big fan of butt the glass together and run a bead on the inside. To me, that's just not doing the job right. That's how I see it. Like I said, there's more than one way to do these things. And fortunately for me, I'm home with the microphone, so we're going to do it the way I want to do it.
Danny mentioned the gap that he's going to have for a silicone joint. Common theory would be to have a small gap as possible, but actually works counter to what you want to do, because houses breathe. I had a customer one time that told me, I make my gaps so tight that you can't put a credit card through it. Technically, that's not a good installation, because as houses breathe in the warm and cold climates, your glass is going to expand, the wall is going to expand and contract, and if you have it too tight of a gap there, it's not going to expand with it, and glass on glass doesn't make good bedfellows. So keep at least a quarter inch, 16th inch gap, whatever you're comfortable with, but make sure you have a gap there to allow for tolerances. The jury is still out whether a proper installation is with clamps or with channel. There's no right or wrong answer. Clamps give you more of a frameless glass look. Channel, one person used to say, well, why use channel? It's a frameless shower door. Yes, it's a frameless shower door. That doesn't mean that you can't use channel to secure the fixed panels. Using channel has benefits. You can actually account for walls that are out. When you have a channel that's 3/4 of an inch tall, you don't have to order your glass out of square, and it does hide any outages that might be in the glass or in the wall. 6 to 1, half dozen of there's no right answer. Some people love clamps, and that's why we offer both options. As Danny's tightening this down, it brings another point up. I was at a job site recently where a customer was using an electric gun to attach the glass clamps onto the glass. That couldn't be the biggest error that I see. You never want to use an electric gun or a screw gun to make the attachment to the screw to the back plate. You want to use a hand bit. You want to make sure I believe it's a number 3 bit that's used. And when you're tightening it down, you're going to start feeling resistance. When you start tightening it down, you're going to hear a squeak. You're all familiar with that sound. When you hear that, turn one more revolution, and that's going to actually give you the pressure you need on that clamp. Some people feel that the tighter they have it down, the better. That's actually not what you want to do. You want to let the gasket do its job. If you over-tighten the clamp onto the glass, you're actually compressing the gasket and thinning it out so it's not within the specifications it was designed for. So do not use electric screw guns, and when you hear the squeak, give it another turn and then be confident that that's going to give you the pressure that this is designed to do. So,
do you have a specific torque spec that is...
There isn't. It's a specific torque spec in your mind where you just, when you feel comfortable, that's the specific spec. Now, as the gasket does compress, I do recommend at the end of the installation, go back and just tighten it down a little bit. Again, don't bear down on it, but tighten it down. You'll get another quarter turn revolution, and that's fine. The problem is, and you've all probably experienced it, when you over-tighten it, the gasket starts leaving the parameter of the plate, and you start seeing gasket. Then what do? You usually take a knife and you cut it down. You're actually taking away the holding force that that gasket's designed to do by cutting it away. So don't over-tighten it and just trust in the hinge. It will do its job.
So as you can see, we must have done something right because the door actually misses the glass. So that was a big cross my fingers moment right then. But no, this thing was measured and thoughtfully assembled, so we knew that it was going to work. What we're going to talk about now is how to set the door. Now, we're not going to take the door out and mess with that. It's just too involved. But generally speaking, most people will put the hinges on the door glass. And by the way, remember how I was saying that when you put the 90-degree return panel up, I came up and I measured from the wall over to my opposing wall to make sure I've got the right opening size. And I also alluded to the fact that when you put your fixed panel in, you want to do the same thing. So that way, I measure from my panel to the wall, top and bottom, make sure I've left the door opening size I want to leave. If you find that it's a little bit off, now is a great time to find that it's off because you can actually loosen the screws and pitch the one piece of glass up a little bit, bring it over, and make sure you leave the door opening size you want to leave. Now that you've left the door opening size you want, generally you're going to put the hinges on the door and center the hinge within the cutout of the door, bring the door into the opening, pick it up, set it down right on the base on tapered wood shims, or we have some leveling tools that help you out as well. Put it in a position to where it's going to align with your fixed panel. You need to raise it, lower it, kick the bottom in, the bottom out, whatever it is that you need to do. Align your door properly, mark the holes that you will ultimately drill into the vertical wall. Take the door down, drill it with the wall that is, and bring the door back up and screw it up, screw it on into place. A lot of times you'll still need to fine-tune your door. When you're raising and lowering shims or using tools at the bottom to get the door to align correctly, that doesn't mean that the glass moved within the hinge while you were using it. So a lot of times you just loosen the clamping screws on the hinge, top and bottom, raise the door, get it exactly where you want it to be, then you do your tightening. Like Doug said, you're going to tighten it until it feels like you just cannot tighten it anymore and the hinges will squeal and you just tighten it until it stops. You'll do it as tight as you can, then wait 15 minutes, and when you tighten it again, you'll find you'll get another quarter turn out of it because the materials have to settle, basically. They have to come down and settle. A lot of people make the mistake of tightening the door once and you're done with it. That is a tactical error. You do need to retighten it again. And oftentimes I'll even do it a third time just before I leave the house. Clean everything up, tools are on the way out, screwdriver in your back pocket. Last thing you do is just tighten it down one last time before you leave the house. And that's the ins and outs of putting in a door. Any questions? Yes, sir. Well, and he asked the question, do you put in the door first or do you put in the door last? It's a valid question. I always put the door in last. I don't know why. It's how I was taught. That's just what I've always done. I've always put my furthest panel away from the door in first and work my way around, make myself the door opening I know I need to leave. Other people have said, well, heck, put the door in first and then work off the door, work your way around. The only reason I don't like that is I find that if I work my way around, once I get to the end, if I don't have the adjustability that I need, I feel like I'm going to be in trouble. I feel like I get more adjustability out of a door at the end than I can out of a fixed panel running into a wall, especially if it has clamps. I know Doug brought up something about channels versus clamps earlier, and if you've got undulating, ugly walls, you don't want to use clamps. You use channels in cases such as that. You may have room left over to do it. But clamps, unforgiving, very unforgiving, especially with the clearances you want to leave. Leaving the 16th against the wall, good luck, you're not going to get anything out of that. I don't know. I just do door last. That's just the way I was raised, I guess.
It's similar to a commercial door application where you want to create an RO, you want to create a rough opening. So by putting your panels into place, you can then put your door into the rough opening that you have. And as Danny said, it's easier to adjust the doors and the panels before you get the installation done. So that's the best way to do that. One thing I talked about a little bit earlier was this is a frameless shower door. So when you're designing this and talking to your client about this is when you want to address a lot of the concerns. Danny brought up one thing about the pitch of a threshold. We all have been to job sites before where the threshold is pitched outward. If it's pitched outward and you install a shower door, the water is going to come out of that enclosure. When that happens, whose fault is that? Who are they going to blame? They're going to blame the installer. If you can address the pitch of a threshold before you start the installation, it's now the responsibility of the contractor. So make a point of checking the pitch on that. Make sure it's obviously pitched inward. Another thing we like to talk about is the seals, sweeps, and wipes that are used. As you can see, there's no seals and wipes on this one here, and ideally in a perfect world, you don't want to use any seals and wipes. If you do, the most common one to use is the bottom drip edge. It has a bottom seal with a drip edge that actually sheds the water away from the bottom of the door. It's not visible, it's at the bottom of the enclosure, and it's probably utilized in 95% of the shower doors that are out there. Then you start worrying about where's the direction of the shower head coming from. Is there going to be sprays and things like that? I mean, God forbid if you get any water out onto the shower doors, outside the shower. The customer always complains, oh, there's water coming out of here. It's not an aquarium. It's going to have water that's going to come out of here. And the problem is you're starting to see specialized shower heads or body washes. They're like car washes inside these things now with sprays coming from every direction. You're going to get water infiltration coming outward. Then you're going to start using seals and wipes. And we offer you a myriad of different types of seals to use. Keep in mind that if you're going to use a seal and a wipe, it's going to take up the gap that you have, which is why we like to allow a proper gap for this. 3/16 of an inch is a very popular gap that you're going to leave. 1/4 inch is done by some people. The minute you start using a smaller gap, you're limited to the seals that you're going to use. When using a seal that uses a double-sided tape, VHB tape, I'm sure we've all used this here, there's a proper way to do it. When you're using the VHB tape, people don't realize that the VHB or very high bond tape is a sealant. It cures. It's not an instant adhesion to the glass and to the polycarbonate. So the proper way to do it is when you have the glass, clean the glass edge. You want to take an alcohol wipe. You know those little wet nap type of wipes that are available? Throw a bunch of those into the toolbox of your installer. You want to wipe down the edge of the glass because we all have oils on our hand as we're carrying the glass. As you wipe that down, let that dry. Shouldn't take more than 15 seconds. And then take the double-sided tape and put it onto the edge of the glass. Then take the back of a razor blade, or ideally maybe a seam roller, like a wallpaper roll or something, and before you peel off the tape, the release paper, push the tape firmly into the glass, making sure there's no air bubbles. Then you want to put the polycarbonate onto the tape. Then you have to allow the tape to cure, and that's the biggest problem, is you think you're done, you leave the job site, the customer is so excited to take a shower that the minute you leave, they're taking a shower. It has to cure for 24 to 48 hours. Anybody do an installation before where they start getting customers complaining that the seals are starting to fall off? I think we've all been down that road once or twice before. If you allow it to cure, you're going to minimize that effect, because any air bubble that gets in there, the moisture will attack and it's going to cause it to not work as designed. Any questions on seals and wipes or installation techniques that we have so far?
Please join us for our 2:30 Express Learning in booth 913.
What Danny's doing now is he's preparing the blue tape, and I'm assuming he's going to talk about the proper installation techniques for silicone.
How'd you figure that, Doug? I'll tell you, man. That's why we keep them. Taping off the opening before you silicone it is extremely important. Obviously, you don't want silicone to get all over everything, so running tape inside and outside on the sight lines, the right way to do it. Leaving a 16th gap between the two panels of glass is the right way to do it. I pump silicone through from the inside to the outside. It has to come all the way through. You don't go on one side and the other side. You'll trap air bubbles in the middle. Not a good look. So when you pump it through from the inside to the outside, it'll come out and it'll leave like a little ribbon of silicone out here. Once it's done that all the way down, then you know you're ready to tool it, thin it all out, and then you peel your tape immediately. That's what I do. And did a pretty nifty job taping this in such a short amount of time. I was a tape wizard, now I'm a former wizard. But I still got it. That's the right way to do a silicone joint in our estimation. Any questions? Other than this gentleman here, he seems to be the man with questions. I like that. No? Okay, good. And yeah, you know, and just want to touch on the showers online just one more time, kind of beat you over the head with it one more time. This size was generated using the program. It works. It's basically an industry standard at this point. All of your temperers use it. You know, look around, whoever you're buying your glass from, they use showers online. And if you, you know, if you're doing the frameless business, you want to take control of them, of the showers that you generate. Obviously, you can use showers online. It doesn't just generate glass sizes. It also comes up with your price for your glass. It comes up with a beautiful quote you can send to your customers, and that kind of thing. So that's where we are with that.
It can also be customized. So when you generate a quote, and the quote generation part of this, and I'm talking about not the quote which will generate the cost of the hardware that you're now going to be using, but it's going to be a quote to your customer. When you generate a quote to your customer, let's say an installation like this, which might go for anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500, let's say, you can, on this program, type in the cost that you're going to be charging your client, Mrs. Smith or whoever it happens to be. You can put an area where you can put your logo, your phone number, and your company information on this. So when you print this quote that you're going to give to your client, it's professionally done. It actually shows you a diagram of the enclosure that you're going to design for the client. It has an area for you to put the price, any notes that you want to put down saying we're going to be using oil rub bronze hardware, we're going to be using 1/2 inch thick tempered glass. Any notes that you want to put in there, can do so, and then you're handing that in, and that's just a professional way to present this to your client. It's all about how you're going to present it to them from the very beginning when you quote it, all the way through to the very end when you're walking away at the end of the installation. Often when I talk to people about when you're walking away, leave a good impression, because the best salesperson is going to be the customer that you just did an installation for. And something I always recommend, and maybe hopefully many of you are using it, is leave something for them. We all like to get something for free. Leave a can of glass cleaner, a squeegee, something just as a thank you for your business. I'm leaving something here for you, and it might cost you $10, $15, $20 to do so, but that goodwill that you're giving is what the client's going to remember. They didn't remember the $3,000 that they just wrote a check for. They remember that they got this really cool squeegee or the glass cleaner. I have a client that actually made a small little wicker basket, and she puts a can of glass cleaner with their company logo on it, a squeegee, a face cloth, just kind of a nice little thing, and just leaves it right there at the shower upon leaving. And that just makes you feel good when you come home and you see this enclosure. So it starts in the beginning, as Danny said, from when you're doing the quotation, all the way down to when you walk away at the end of the day. And then you're going to get a check and move on to the next one.
Okay, well, I think that's just going to about do it for us, unless anyone has anything else. Thank you all for attending, spending a little bit of time with us, and hopefully what we talked about was something helpful.
We're at booth 1227.
And you can visit C.R. Laurence at booth 1227, right at the front of the opening of the hall. Thanks so much.
Thank you.